4-bet bluff strategy. What a 4-bet bluff is. A 4-bet bluff is a pre-flop re-raise made without a premium value hand. You use it to win the pot immediately by forcing folds from a player who 3-bets too wide. Your expected value comes from fold equity first, then post-flop playability when called. Your 4-bet range has two jobs. It protects your 4-bet for value hands, and it stops opponents from printing expected value with non-stop 3-bets. If you do not 4-bet bluff, your opening range becomes capped versus aggressive regulars. Online pools punish passivity. If your default response is calling and hoping, the rake drag plus poor equity realization, R, turns marginal hands into losers. Your baseline needs a precise 4-bet plan. First, value 4-bets, hands that gladly stack off. Second, bluff 4-bets, hands chosen for blockers and unblockers and clean expected value. The Poker Place Exploit Framework. First, the exploit 4-bet bluff the players who 3-bet wide and fold too much to 4-bets. Second, the risk, over-bluffing into sticky pools that defend correctly. Third, the counter, tighten bluffs, shift to more calls, and increase value density if they start 5-betting wider. Linear versus polarized 4-bet ranges. Your 4-bet construction depends on villain's 3-bet strategy. If villain 3-bets tight and value heavy, you stay mostly linear with fewer bluffs. If villain 3-bets wide, you can move more polarized, value plus blockers. Linear versus polarized ranges is not theory trivia. It is a workload reduction tool for multi-tabling. You pick the structure that maximizes expected value with minimal post-flop complexity. First, linear 4-bet. You include hands like pocket queens, pocket jacks, ace-queen suited, sometimes ace-queen offsuit based on sizing and rake. Second, polarized 4-bet. You keep value like KK plus and add bluff candidates like ace-5 suited to ace-2 suited, sometimes king-5 suited to king-4 suited. A linear range reduces post-flop mistakes when called. A polarized range increases fold equity and leverages blockers and unblockers. You choose based on how often they fold or 5-bet. The Poker Place. Exploit Framework. First, the exploit, go polarized, versus wide 3-betters who overfold to 4-bets. Second, the risk, polarizing versus a tight 3-better burns money because you get called by strong, uncapped ranges. Third, the counter, if they stop folding, shift to linear and let your value dominate their continuing range. Blockers, unblockers, and why ace-x and king-x work. Your best 4-bet bluffs remove the hands that continue. That is the core logic of blockers and unblockers. Hands with an ace or king reduce the combos of pocket aces, pocket kings, and ace-king in villain's range. Ace-x is the cleanest blocker class. Holding an ace cuts villain's pocket aces combos from 6 to 3. It also cuts ace-king from 16 to 12, so their 5-bet value density drops immediately. King-x is weaker than ace-x but still functional. It blocks pocket kings and some ace-king. It also avoids blocking many of villain's fold region hands, which is valuable. First, preferred suited wheel bluffs. Ace-5 suited to ace-2 suited. Second, occasional suited king bluffs in some pools. King-5 suited to king-4 suited. Third, avoid offsuit trash with bad equity realization, R, like ace-7 offsuit, or king-9 offsuit as default bluffs. Your goal is fold equity plus acceptable playability. Suited hands keep backdoor equity when called, which increases equity realization, R. Offsuit variants tend to realize poorly and invite hope poker. The Poker Place. Exploit Framework. First, the exploit, 4-bet bluff with ace-x and selective king-x versus opponents who overfold and over 5-bet value only. Second, the risk. If you spam blocker bluffs, tracking software will flag you as 4-bet happy, and villains will widen 5-bet jamming ranges. Third, the counter. Reduce frequency, choose more suited bluffs, and increase trap calls with strong hands that dominate their jam range. Expected value and minimum defense. Frequency in 4-bet pots. Your 4-bet bluff prints only if villain folds enough. That threshold comes from basic expected value and minimum defense frequency, MDF, logic. You want villain's fold frequency to exceed your break-even point. Example structure. Button opens, big blind 3 bets, button 4 bets to a size that risks X to win Y. If your bluff has near zero equity when jammed, you need folds roughly X divided by X plus Y. The practical takeaway for online pools. If big blind is defending above their correct minimum defense frequency, MDF, your pure bluff 4 bets lose. If big blind is folding below MDF, your bluffs gain immediate expected value. First, when rake is high, calling more 3 bets with marginal hands gets punished. Second, 4-bet bluffs reduce post-flop rake drag by ending the hand pre-flop. Third, use tracking software to confirm who is overfolding to 4 bets by position. Do not call 3 bets with hands like pocket fours purely to set mine without implied odds. That is classic hope poker. You either have a plan for stacks and textures or you fold or 4-bet. The poker place exploit framework. First, the exploit. Target players who underdefend versus 4 bets and violate minimum defense frequency, MDF. Second, the risk. Assuming pool-wide overfolds can lead to spew in tougher stakes or tougher time zones. Third, the counter. If they defend more, reduce bluffs and increase calls with hands that realize well in position. In position blueprint, button or cutoff versus big blind. Most of your 4-bet bluffs happen in position. You have better equity realization, R, more information, and more control over pot size. This is the standard online grind spot, especially when multi-tabling. Versus big blind 3 bets, you care about whether big blind is capped or uncapped. A merged 3-bet range can still be uncapped. What matters is if they can show up with enough KK+ and ace-king to punish you. First, value core in most pools. Pocket queens and better and ace-king suited, sometimes ace-king offsuit and better by rake and sizing. Second, bluff core, ace-5 suited to ace-2 suited. Third, mixed candidates by pool. King 5, suited to king 4 suited, sometimes ace. Jack suited as value or call, depending on 3-bet size. Your big leak to avoid is overcalling. Hands like king-jack offsuit versus a large big blind 3-bet often realize poorly. If you are not 4-betting, folding is usually better than hoping to outplay post-flop. The poker place exploit framework. First, the exploit, in position, apply 4-bet pressure with blocker bluffs versus big blinds who auto 3-bet and fold. Second, the risk. 4-betting too often makes you predictable and increases cold 5-bet aggression. Third, the counter. Respond with more calls, protect your flat range, and tighten your bluff node. Out of position reality, small blind and big blind 4-bet bluffs. Out of position, 4-bet bluffing is a different game. Your equity realization, R, drops, and post-flop lines get expensive. You need stronger blockers and tighter selection. From small blind versus button, open, and 3-bet dynamics, you often run a more linear approach. When you go polarized, pick hands that can continue versus a jam or play acceptably when called. Suited wheel aces over perform as bluffs because they can make nut flushes and wheel straights. First, preferred out-of-position bluffs. Ace-5 suited to ace-4 suited, sometimes ace-3 suited to ace-2 suited if villain overfolds. Second, hands to avoid as out-of-position, 4-bet bluffs, 8-7 suited. King-jack offsuit, pocket fours. Third, if you use king-x blockers out of position, keep them suited. King-5 suited to king-4 suited at most. Do not justify weak out-of-position bluff 4 bets with it plays fine post-flop. That is hope poker in disguise. Out of position, you need immediate fold equity plus strong blocker logic. The poker place exploit framework. First, the exploit versus button 3-bet pressure, 4-bet bluff selectively with strong ace-x blockers to deny their positional edge. Second, the risk. If you bloat pots out of position with low equity hands, you torch expected value and invite post-flop leverage. Third, the counter. If villain starts calling 4 bets in position more, reduce bluffs and increase your value and call range. Post-flop plan when your 4-bet bluff gets called. If your 4-bet bluff gets called, villain's range is usually stronger and more condensed. Your job is not to win every pot. Your job is to avoid lighting money on fire with automatic triple barrels. Think in terms of range interaction and who is capped. In 4-bet pots, you often remain more uncapped than the caller. But a call range can still contain traps, so do not assume they are weak. First, c-bet more on high card boards that favor your uncapped range like ace-high and king-high textures. Second, slow down on low-connected boards where your bluff has poor coverage. Third, use blockers and unblockers post-flop too. Choose barrels that block their continues and unblock folds. In tracking software, watch your 4-bet pot red line. If you are losing heavily when called, your bluff selection or your c-bet strategy is leaking. Fix the node, do not reduce aggression across the board. The Poker Place Exploit Framework. First, the exploit. C-bet selectively on textures that pressure the caller's condensed range. Second, the risk. Autopiloting c-bets because you have initiative leads to negative expected value lines. Third, the counter. If villains start check raising 4-bet pots more, tighten c-bets and protect your check back range. Scenario box. Hero hand, ace of hearts, 5 of spades. The flop, king of clubs, 7 of hearts, 2 of spades. The action, button opens, big blind 3 bets. You 4-bet bluff in position with ace of hearts, 5 of spades. Big blind calls. Big blind checks flop. You have blockers and unblockers working. You block ace-king and pocket aces, and you have backdoor wheel and some backdoor flush equity. C-betting small applies pressure to hands like pocket queens through pocket jacks, and some king-queen type continues depending on pool tendencies. If big blind is a station in your database, you check back more often and realize your equity. If big blind is overfolding to c-bets in 4-bet pots, you c-bet at high frequency. You do not barrel turn blindly without relevant blockers. Key takeaway: 4-bet bluff rules. First, build your 4-bet strategy around linear versus polarized ranges, not vibes. Second, select bluffs using blockers and unblockers. Prioritize ace-5 suited to ace-2 suited, then selective suited ace-x. Third, let minimum defense frequency, MDF, and fold equity drive expected value, not hope-based calls. Fourth, in position, you can bluff more because equity realization, R, is higher. Out of position, tighten heavily. Fifth, when called, play a disciplined post-flop plan. Do not donate stacks in 4-bet pots to protect your ego. Now, let's test your edge. Question 1. What are the 2 primary sources of expected value for a 4-bet bluff according to the article? Answer: fold equity first, then post-flop playability, equity realization when called. Explanation. The article states the bluff's expected value comes mainly from forcing folds pre-flop, with secondary value from having a hand that can realize some equity if the 4-bet gets called. Question 2. When should you use a more linear 4-bet range instead of a polarized one? Answer: when villain's 3-bet range is tight and value heavy, you stay mostly linear with fewer bluffs. Explanation: the article explains that polarizing into a tight 3-better burns money because you get called by strong, uncapped ranges. Linear construction reduces mistakes and keeps your continuing hands stronger. Question 3. In the article's blocker example, how do ace blockers change villain's pocket aces and ace-king combo counts? Answer: pocket aces is reduced from 6 combos to 3 and ace-king is reduced from 16 combos to 12. Explanation: the text explicitly states that holding an ace halves the pocket aces combinations and removes 4 ace-king combinations, lowering villain's 5-bet value density. Question 4. Using the article's expected value setup, if you risk X to win Y with near zero equity when jammed, what fold rate do you need for a break even 4-bet bluff? Answer: roughly x divided by x plus y. Explanation: the article gives this break-even threshold directly for a near-zero equity bluff. You need folds at about x over x plus y for the raise to not lose money immediately. Question 5. In the scenario box, ace-5 on king, 7, 2 after. Your 4-bet bluff gets called. What flop strategy does the article recommend against doing? Answer: don't barrel the turn blindly without relevant blockers. Explanation: the scenario notes that a small c-bet can apply pressure depending on pool tendencies, but it specifically warns not to continue firing automatically on later streets without the right blocker logic. Study hard, play smart. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.